All right, I think we're live. What's up, everybody? Welcome back finally to the Baitman channel. We're streaming tonight. I've got special guest John Garret. He went and got a little secret bait. He wants to tell you all about a little modification he does to it. And anyway, John is the Bassmaster Opens EQ points leader. He's a former Bethel University college fisherman, and he's from West Tennessee, specifically around Union City, which is right down the road from me. And I've been wanting to get with John for quite a while, and we got a nice little in-between period here before the Bassmaster Opens heads up north. And I'm really confident this guy is not only going to continue to be consistent, but he is going to qualify for the Elite Series. He's a really, really good fisherman, very versatile. And we're going to talk about some baits he uses. We'll talk about the tournaments he's fished, what's helped him be consistent. And we're going to get him on stream. But first, I need to thank 6centsfishing.com. They've been really cool with me. And Waterland Sunglasses. Anytime you guys shop off there, use my code Baitman, just one word, Baitman. You're going to get 10% off. 6 cents and 15% off Waterland if you're looking for sunglasses. And also, use my Tackle Warehouse link. Gets me a little coin every now and then. And I need to do some ordering off Tackle Warehouse. So I'm thinking about making a Tackle Warehouse order again this week on another stream. And you guys can help me pick out some new baits. Kind of looking at myself, the coal shad. I want to break that one down. I slacked on the bait buying this year. Got to get some new stuff. So let me share this over to Facebook real quick. And I'll get John in the stream. He's waiting patiently behind the scenes. I would like to shout out Bassmaster because that's one of the best thumbnail pictures I've used in a long time. I like it when I can Google up a guy and they got a good photo. So also want to welcome all the channel members, all the subscribers to the channel. I've got the chat set on subscriber mode only. I do that to keep the spam, the porn bots out. Whether you want to watch that kind of stuff or not, that's up to you, but I just don't like it in chat. All right. Oops. I hope I put the right link. Because sometimes I'll post this and I post the backdoor way to get in. No, I can't do that. All right. I'll have to get my YouTube link. Sorry, John. Sorry, chat. Y'all know me. It ain't a Baitman stream where everything goes correct. Hopefully YouTube is being kind to you guys and sending out notifications. As always, you can listen back the next day. There we go. There's the right link. There we go. We're posted up on the Facebooks now. All right. You guys ready for John? What's up, Tom? What's up, JP? What's up, Nightbot? Hey, Tony. Darius. Hey, Darius, we need to go night fishing. Bad. Now that I'm on day shift. All right, here's John. What's up, John? Sorry you're back there in the background. Listen to me ramble and get everybody on here.
No, I'm good, man. I appreciate having me on. This is a kind of a long time coming for us at this live going here. Yeah.
You're just really, honestly, you're just down the road. I almost could have set up a stream down there in at your place. I got a lot of family in the Dyersburg, the big town of Halls area, if you know where that's at.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Halls used to be like a duck hunting mecca.
Yeah, still is somewhat. Yeah, my wife's family's from Dyersburg, so.
Right. So how does a guy from Dyersburg, Union City, get into the Bassmaster Open? Tell us, and lead the points. Tell us a little bit about your story.
I guess just to start up, my granddad and dad were huge in the marine business. They sold boats, worked on boats for a living. My granddad owns a store here, Union City Marine, and he was just a huge outdoorsman. So wintertime we were duck hunting, spring, summer, fall, early winter, we were fishing every weekend, and very fortunate to have him growing up, getting me into that. He's really good. He taught me a lot of things, and when I got into, I don't know, late middle school, I joined the Reelfoot Lake Bass Club.
Mm-hmm.
Ventured off into Obion County Central High School. We started a high school team there when I was a sophomore, and really had no plans of going to college at the time. And Gary Mason from Bethel just kind of popped into my granddad's shop one day and was like, "Hey, John, you want to come fish for Bethel? Give you a scholarship. Come fish for us." And I was like, I'll debate about it. And it kind of weighed on me a little bit. Didn't know if I could, go compete there. Looking at some of the guys, Jake Lawrence and Zach Parker and all the guys were dropping huge bags of fish there. I didn't know if I could compete with those people, but I went, and it was definitely the right choice for sure.
It seems like Bethel is like a breeding ground for like top tier bass fishermen, like Jake Lawrence, Zach Parker, my buddy Randall Morse. He works down at a boat dealership there in Union City. That they're all guys that I would not want to fish against, but I want to fish with them, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Randall's a really good dude. He cracks me up. That him and Jake, that the infamous spoon video with the Parker Magnum spoon at Pickwick. So many people saw that, and it really took that thing off. But what is it about Bethel that produces all these fishermen? Is it where they're start fishing from? You said Reelfoot. That's a tough lake.
Yeah, Reelfoot don't have much to do with it. I'll say that. Bethel was the first and only program with a scholarship for a long time, and fortunate for Bethel, when they first started that program, there was a whole lot of really good anglers, that age, and Gary's offered scholarships. We all just kind of jumped aboard, and we all kind of went there, and some people from different areas went there and started fishing Kentucky Lake, I guess you can say, in the end of the heydays, and spent more time on the water than in class. And we learned a lot from each other. I think that was really the big thing.
Yeah, man, when you bring up Kentucky Lake in the heyday, it's just so many memories. And I think the lake's coming back a little bit. I don't know if it's close to what it was, but if you grind it out and go to some more finessier techniques, you can catch them. I've seen guys catching them on a crankbait this year, and that's deep crankbait. I've got so many 6XDs, 10XDs, DTs, 6 cents. Just they want to get wet, and they just haven't bit it real well over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, the lake is definitely coming around. If you get a chance to go out in January, February, early March, when they're ripping a lot of current, and it puts those fish in a current break or later to the bank, you can see we're definitely having some fish starting to come back. And it probably will never be what it was. You see all the lakes through the TVA chain for the most part, really growing grass good this year, eelgrass. I don't know if Kentucky Lake has a water quality issue. If it, there's a million things. It could be the carp. It could be how much current flows through. No one really knows, I don't think. But we're not going to see it back to the way it was back in, 2010 to 2014. But it's looking up for sure. It kind of gives me a little more hope to go drive an hour to go fish. So.
Well, our smallmouth population is really helped this lake. And I don't know if it's do we have more, which I think we do, or are guys fishing different or in different areas than they used to. What's up, Brad Kell? Brad?
Oh, yeah, I know Brad. Kentucky Lake man.
Yeah. He's a hammer. It's always feels weird when I talk to Brad because he's like 7 foot tall and I'm over 5'5". He's a good guy. He's a hammer too. Brad's one of those guys, man. He rolls up in a tournament. I figure he's on him. Tried to chase him down one time, but his bass cat was a little bit faster than the trout. But let's talk about the Bassmaster Opens, John.
Okay.
This is what, your second or third year fishing them?
This is I won that college bracket in 2016. Fished it, I would say part-time in 2017. I fished not all of them, but a couple divisions. And then this is my third year straight fishing them.
And you lead the points.
Lead the points, yeah. It's got a long ways to go, but so far this season, all except one day this year, has been pretty flawless, I would say.
So, is it how much during the tournament has the points, staying in that top 9 weigh on your head, or are you going out there and just trying your best to execute and let it fall how it falls?
It stays in my. If I would say it wasn't in my head most of the time, I'd be lying. I try to push the bug out sometimes, try not to think about it. But when I launch my boat the first morning of practice, that's what's on my mind. It's like, I need to go out, find a way to catch a decent limit. That way I don't drop down in points. Because at the point in the season, where we're at and had a good start, if I can just go out every tournament and, maybe not catch a winning bag of fish or maybe not catching a top 10 bag, but if I can go out and just catch a decent limit every day for the rest of the year, I feel pretty good about making it this year.
Now, when you practice, how many of the lakes on the schedule this year were you familiar with, and did you have something kind of predetermined in your mind, or do you just practice by the seat of your pants?
This year when the schedule come out, of course, it's a better schedule than we had the past couple of years. Bass was really hyping it up, and the big bass deal. And when the schedule came out, I was like, "Ugh, none of those really look good to me." And there has not been a predominant pattern so far at any of the lakes we've been to. It's been everywhere we've been has been mixed. There's fish spawning, there's fish off the bank, there's fish in that intermediate range. So I was like, I'm just going to go out this tournament. I've said that every time, fishing my strength. I like fishing offshore. So I've been, really launching my boat and, doing my research, launching my boat in high percentage areas. You could call them community areas, where stuff is supposed to go down at, and really picking apart fishing the way that I like to fish. And that's what I've done different this year, really, is trying not to chase something that I'm not very good at.
Gotcha, yeah. I always said, you got to fish to your abilities and what you're confident at and your skills. I'm not a real good drop shot guy. I'm trying to get better, so I'm not going to go out trying to drop shot in practice. I'm going to try to throw a crankbait or a worm if it's an offshore deal that I'm confident with. Speaking of, Don G, he's a long-time subscriber. He's got I told guys drop them questions. He wants to know what baits you were using at Eufaula. That's the most recent tournament.
Oh, Don, Eufaula, Oklahoma, most recent. I caught them all on a drop shot and a shaky head. I weighed one of my biggest fish. I weighed it on football jig.
Are you using your drop shot? Before forward-facing sonar, we kind of figured out here on Kentucky Lake, man, when it gets tough and they're suspended, you find them on side scan or down skid suspended. That drop shot to catch them. Is it more of a player now with forward-facing sonar, or is it because, dude, you got 300 boats in a tournament in these opens? Those fish, especially in these community areas, get a lot of pressure, and they just like that small presentation.
Is all the above.
All the above.
That's the answer, all the above. Baitman, it's every tournament this year. Eufaula, Alabama, I weighed all my fish on a big crankbait. Every other tournament this year, I've probably weighed at least 75% of my fish on a drop shot this year.
Really?
Yep. Using my forward facing, and a lot of times I'm even fishing schools of fish, or if I'm fishing a stump with one fish, or I got on a deal at Bugs Island where I was catching spawners offshore on stumps. But that drop shot is a bait that I'm like, well, if that fish is going to bite anything I have in my tackle box, the chances are it's going to bite my drop shot above any of them. So instead of starting with a big worm or a big crankbait or something else, I'm pitching my drop shot right to that fish. I'm not throwing past it. and slowly dragging up to it. I'm wanting my bait to splash right over it, and I use a heavy weight, use a 3/8 or half ounce weight, and I fall right down on that fish, and that's how I've been getting. Like I said, I probably weighed 75% of my fish on that rig
Really?
this year. Yep.
That's surprising that you use that heavy of a weight.
Yeah.
Like, I try not to go over like a 1/4 ounce. Then
Yeah.
again, you're leading the Bassmaster Open points, and I'm sitting here in a tackle room.
Yeah. I've used a heavier weight on my drop shot than most everybody. Not saying it helps me get bites, but when I'm rigging up tackle in the afternoons, or I see other people's rods out, they got a 16th, a 1/4, something like that on. I'm usually between 3/8 and a half, and most of the time, and you see this with your forward facing, is when you pitch your bait out, and that fish follows it down most every time. And if it's closer to the bottom, the better. But the faster that bait's falling, it seems like the harder they react. And they don't bite that bait. I wish I had one to demonstrate. They don't bite that bait when your weight's here. Let me get my fingers up. When your weight's here and your worm's here and your line is tight and you're shaking it, they bite it when your weight's on the bottom and that worm is free falling, just kind of floating in the water column. So almost all my baits come on, I guess, a slack line. I throw it out, they follow it down, my weight hits the bottom, that worm free falls, and that's when that fish eats it.
I've been catching a few on Kentucky Lake on drop shot bait, and I could see them on forward facing. And one thing I noticed last time I was out there is I got so many bites after I stopped shaking it or whatnot, and just let it sit there, almost counting 1, 2, 3, and all of a sudden one would just take off with it. Yeah. And the followers, especially there on forward facing, when you get in school and they'll throw it next to one, if they're going to eat it, they'll like follow it down, sit there and look at it, and all of a sudden, boom, takes off. And I'm not a great drop shot fisherman. I'll break quite a few fish off, and I'm trying to get the. What's your leader mainline? Are you a braid to fluorocarbon, or are you straight fluorocarbon? And I want to ask you, what size hook do you use?
Yeah, so I'm usually a 15-pound braid to a 10 or 8-pound leader, fluorocarbon leader. I use my braids a color braid. It's just a Seaguar Smackdown. It's kind of that green color. I like to be able to see it. And I use a long leader. I use at least a 12-foot leader. I like when I hook my weight by my reel, I want my fluorocarbon to be in my reel. A lot of times that's kind of the length where I got my rod up and I'm trying to lip a fish. I want my fluorocarbon in my reel. Forgot what all you asked, but yeah, 15-pound braid, 10 to 8-pound fluorocarbon. Oh, yes, what hook?
Yes.
If I'm largemouth fishing, I use a 2-aught owner cover shot to Texas rig my worm, filler worm, robo worm.
Gotcha.
Most time a pink, red bug color. 2-aught for that. And if I'm smallmouth fishing, I go to a number 2, either nose hooked or threaded on there with my hook exposed.
Are you throw that dream shot quite a bit? Are you into the siren train, the bright chartreuse? Have you thrown that for them smallies?
That gets a smallmouth. Yeah, it sure does. Something about it.
You'll be throwing that quite a bit here in the upcoming weeks.
Yes, that, and I really like that siren caffeine shad, the soft jerk bait.
Really?
That gets a lot of bites. Sure does.
I know Menendez and Zona, they're big on the baby Z2. They like that. Which makes a lot of sense. The first bait I ever used on a drop shot years ago, this was actually before Kentucky Lake got really good. It was good. Was the Super Fluke Junior, just a pearl white one in the infamous canal, and you could get over some of them rock piles. And I remember in the fall, and I rigged this thing out. My buddy's like, "What in the world is that?" It's like, "This is called the drop shot." And I started catching them like every cast. They weren't that big, and but that little Super Fluke Junior on there just mimicked those small bait fish very, very well. So those in chat, if you don't got a crazy drop shot bait, find you something, like a baby Z2 or a small caffeine shad, Super Fluke Junior. Those were really, really good, especially in the fall. Now, let me ask you this question. Why does red and pink drop shot worms work so good?
That's the question for the ages. I really don't know. I don't know if it's because we're fishing those worms deeper and it's something they can see better. There's nothing. I've never caught a fish and it spit up a red nightcrawler on my
No,
front deck. Yeah,
never.
so that I cannot answer. And maybe if I were to put a green pumpkin worm on my drop shot, I may catch more fish. I'm not real sure. It's just one of those things. If I'm largemouth fishing and I'm having a drop shot on, it's going to be pink or red bug, even on my shaky head, really.
So, what's your primary bait on that drop shot?
Is a filler worm or a robo worm. Yeah, I
Filler.
like the Strike King filler worm. It's a morning dawn. And there's also a robo worm I like is the Aaron's Magic. It's the pink top with the white bottom on it.
Yes, I like that one quite a bit.
Yep.
It's really crazy from the retail side, when you try to order robo worms, it's unreal amount of colors they have. I mean, Tackle Warehouse probably has the best selection, but they got more colors than Tackle Warehouse shows.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, when guys say, "Well, what's your favorite robo?" It's Air Magic or Morning Dawn. I don't really stray too much. Every now and then, I've caught them on like that Desert Crawl or Brett Heights Magic, which is just green with some chartreuse. But that Dream Shot's a really good one too. I've seen some really big fish caught with that thing. My son actually hooked up with a good one this year on it. So, besides a drop shot, you're going to go out. You're going to go Kentucky Lake, and it's in its prime, or it's better. What's going to be your go-tos for offshore fishing?
If I'm fishing a tournament, it's got to be a crankbait.
Right.
It seems like no matter where I'm at on the Tennessee River or lakes that act like the Tennessee River, Toledo Bend, Sam Rayburn, Lake Eufaula, Alabama, that crankbait gets the bigger size fish to bite. And I don't think it's necessarily because, they're down there feeding on shad. It's just because something you could trick them with. It's something that's burning really fast through their strike zone. It's a reaction bite. So
right.
If I was fishing a tournament, a crankbait, and they wouldn't bite a crankbait, a 3/4 ounce swim bait, a Shadowlicious or a Bass Trick, something like that, Scrounger. I like winding something for a big fish when I'm fishing offshore. And that don't work, I'm tossing a drop shot out there. So
have you gotten to the hair jig train?
I have. I've had hair jigs before they got huge, and I've caught a lot of fish on them, but I've also had a lot of times I'll roll up to a spot and I think, oh, it's cool, I'm about to catch them on a hair jig. I'll get it wet, bomb it out there, multiple bites on cast. And there's so many times I'll throw it out 4 or 5 casts in a row, get 4 or 5 bites on a cast and never catch them. And a lot of times those first 4 or 5 casts is the most important. So I've just really, I have it tied on my deck, but it's almost one of the last things I pick up now. Just because when one bites it, I want to make sure to get him in the boat.
I've always took the hair jig as kind of a finesse approach. I don't usually throw it first.
No.
It's kind of a cleanup deal to me, but I've seen a lot of guys, it's the first thing they throw out there. But I'm like you, if you get on a school that's kind of fired up, I like, I'm a crankbait guy. But the only thing I've got, and you probably can see this maybe forward facing, sometimes you can pull the school a little bit. They can get fired up, and all of a sudden, once you've pulled that school off, is that when you go back to your drop shot or something more vertical?
Yeah, if I pull up to a spot and, it's kind of tricky because most of the time when you have a school that's going to get fired up or bite really well, it's on a place that's relatively flat where you can pull the school no matter where your boat is sitting.
Okay.
But I try my best to position the boat. If I'm happen to find some on a sharp edge, I like to sit out over deeper water and then fire up to the flat. That way they may not come and suspend under the boat. They don't want to sit over at deep water. If I ever pull the school off, I try to drift back so they don't sit right underneath me. But then I'll toss a drop shot. They end up keep getting closer and closer.
You said something interesting talking about, lakes that fish like the Tennessee River. Do you think that's what really helped you on Toledo Bend and Rayburn? Like your experience here on the Prime back when we had a little grass and stuff like that, it made it easier to break those lakes down for you?
Yeah, for sure. You hear what gets driven into everybody's brain is a pattern, a pattern, a pattern, a pattern. And you go to Kentucky Lake, and yeah, it might be an offshore pattern, but the Tennessee River is so spot specific. Like you could find a place fish are on in 5 foot of water, and the next place you may find they may be in 35 foot of water. It's so spot specific, like I said. And when I go to these places, I'm not, some places are different, like Bugs Island I went, and, Highland Reservoirs, you could run a pattern. But those other lakes, they set up the same way. It's spot specific. Wherever you're at on the lake, there's a sweet spot in every creek, on every main river channel that fish get on. So it's really made me concentrate on, let me spend all day not finding a way to get bites, but let me fish all day looking for one magic sweet spot. That way, when I pull up on it, I know that I'm probably going to get bit.
That's very good. Our lakes, these TVA lakes are different.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this: when you're practicing, you're trying to find that juice, that magic sweet spot. How much are you using your forward-facing sonar to help you, or are you actually using your side scan, down image and whatnot to find the juice, and then just you scan it around to see if what you found actually holds fish? And has that helped you, or in my case, it hurts me because I'll pull up on a spot that I know is really good and got fish. Next thing I know, I've been staring at the screen. I'm off 50 yards.
Yeah. It's a combination of everything. One thing that I was really bad at in the past is, I'm still staring at my side scan, but looking at my side scan and going over something and be like, that looks all right. That don't look real good. I'm going to keep going. And the next thing you know, you're behind your screen for 3 or 4 hours and you haven't even stood up to make a cast or check anything. This year, I'm using my side imaging, and if I think anything looks good, a rough patch or a stump or a laydown or a log, that I'm like, well, there might be a few fish on there. I jump up on the front of the boat, throw my trolling motor down, and look at it with my forward facing. And that justifies me that, hey, there's 2 or 3 good ones living there, or there's nothing, The forward facing has just helped me be more efficient. Maybe not necessarily finding big schools of fish, but checking out the structure that I'm seeing on my side imaging.
Right. So how much has it really changed your bait selection? Are you throwing baits specifically that you can see on forward facing, or you just try to get in the general vicinity? I know the drop shot, when you talk about, you see one sitting by a stump or whatnot throwing his face, probably using the forward facing, but you said yourself you love to throw a crankbait. How much of that are you actually watching the crankbait, or you just point it where the fish should be and just start reeling?
Yeah, there's been very few fish that I've caught this year. I'm not saying not because of my forward facing that I have not looked down and lined up and made that cast. Even with the crankbait or whatever I'm throwing, I'm gonna put my trolling motor down, look like, all right, there's a couple, or there's that rough patch, or there's that hump that I'm fishing. Line up, make my cast, and then fish my bait. Well, pretty much everything, yeah.
Since you're a crankbait guy, I'm going to ask you this, and people ask this all the time. What is your go-to crankbait color? If I had to guess, it might be chartreuse powder blueback.
That and citrus. Yeah, that I would say my best color is citrus, and the chartreuse powder blueback that really shines on the Tennessee River, where the water can still be colored and fish be offshore. That colored water and fish being offshore is kind of special for the Tennessee River. So that citrus is just a good all-around color for big crankbait fishing offshore.
What do you think those colors imitate? I've always kind of been under the impression that maybe it imitates a bluegill, but when you're throwing a 10XD, you're getting down 22 foot plus. Maybe it's just pure reaction.
Yeah, it's everything. Look like a bluegill, looks like a shad, looks like a white bass, and it's a reaction. It imitates everything. And something I've learned my forward facing is there's actually a lot more bluegill down there in that 20, 30 foot range than we ever thought there was.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep.
There's some big red air down there,
Yep.
especially up on this north end of the lake. I've caught a few on the drop shot, and man, and you'll know, like you get on a shell bar, and for example, it's happening. Got on a shell bar. There's life everywhere. You almost can't bring a drop shot through there if there's a bluegill because they just
Yeah.
nip and nip and nip and nip, and then all of a sudden it just takes off. Smallmouths grabbed it. So
Yeah.
you learn so much. You talk about growing up on Reelfoot as well. How do you approach a lake like Reelfoot? Natural lake, tons of cover. Dude, I've never seen more stumps and willow trees and lily pads in my life. And years ago, filmed Marty Stone there for 2 days and he got one bite.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you attack a lake like that?
Being time on the water. If you're anywhere around the spawn, just knowing where those fish spawn at. And, fishing Reelfoot has kind of helped me learn very specific kind of shallow water deals
Mm-hmm.
where they use a cypress tree field or a lily pad field. And you could look at it and be like, hey, there's a very slight line of trees going through there. And a lot of times they use those tree lines as highways. They're moving up and down those tree lines, moving constantly. So I've been there's a lake called Caddo in Louisiana
I've heard
that
of it.
I've been really wanting a Bassmaster tournament to go there because it looks just like Reelfoot. I just want to go fish a cypress tree tournament
Yeah.
at some point in my life.
Yeah, the way they jack with the water level here on Kentucky Lake years ago, ledge fishing was kind of an afterthought. It was, man, as soon as that water comes up, it was bushes, it was laydowns, it was willow trees for like a month and a half, and everybody looked forward to it. It was an easy way to catch fish. Wacky rig. I caught a lot of fish on soft jerk bait. I just kind of discovered a fluke, and I love doing that. Spinner baiting in the bushes. And then the frog gets real popular, and it started frogging and buzz baiting it. And I missed that. It's like we only get a week or two a year, and I'm silly because I always buy all these flipping jigs and beaver baits, and I'm ready to go, and it just doesn't work out. But it's also a little bit, we don't have the cover we used to have. So me to go to fish a place like Reelfoot or Caddo or, Bugs Island used to be a pretty good bush lake.
Yeah. Yep. When we were at Bugs Island, the water came up, and I bet half the field caught them in the bushes. It was per se, supposed to be a bush flipping slugfest when we were there. And going to Reelfoot or Crockett, a couple of lakes around here, the little bit of time I spent shallow at Bugs Island, it was nice to have that forward facing shut off and just picking my flipping stick up and dobbing around, flipping bushes and getting set to hook hard and wrangling some out of some thick stuff.
Oh, yeah. Here's a question from Trip Fishing Channel member. He says, Baitman, going to run into you or John at ICAST? I won't be there. John, you going to ICAST?
I will not be there. I have been to ICAST the past 6 years, and I have a Bassmaster Opens practice on St. Lawrence the day after ICAST. So I'm going to spend time packing my boat up, heading up there, and focusing on that tournament. I actually have a baby due. Hopefully she doesn't come while I'm at St. Lawrence River. So I got a lot of other things to think about right now.
Yeah, them babies are game changers, let me tell you, especially them little girls.
Yep.
It's turned out my little girl wants to be the fisherman. My son, Bait Jr., he likes coming here and play with the baits, but sometimes it's hard to get him to go fishing. If I just say I'm going fishing, my girl's like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go, Dad.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. And she has learned the Barbie pole really quick. I'm going to have to upgrade her soon. Jay Henning wants to know, dream shot or a flat minnow?
Flat minnow, I think that's a Berkeley bait. I've never used a flat minnow. I've used a flat worm. That's a tough one. I haven't used a flat minnow for that specific question. I want to say dream shot.
Right.
I like the bigger dream shot. I like the 5-inch instead of the 3-inch. I've had a lot of luck with that bait.
All right, so we're fixing to go up north, the northern swing, and this is like a critical part where it could separate a lot of people. My buddies, me and Ben Milliken are good friends,
Mhm.
and Ben's had an amazing year.
Oh yeah,
He's kind of put some haters to rest.
yeah,
You know, he had a lot of people, oh, this YouTuber, he's going to go out there and it's going to be embarrassing. And I know Ben, he's a good fisherman. And I think now everyone knows this guy's a legit contender. But
yeah.
now it's, well, can he catch him up north? And my question is, John, are you looking forward to going up north? I think you've had some good tournaments up there in the past.
I, I've had some good tournaments on St. Lawrence and Oneida and smallmouth fisheries, but man, every time you go up to St. Lawrence, it's like you love to be up there, enjoying the weather, and being on a good fishery kind of keeps you going through the day. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you're struggling or not having a productive day, like man, the next spot I stop on might be it. Man, it's scary. Um, Going to a big weight tournament that's the biggest playing field that any tournament goes to. You got to worry about wind, you got to worry about waves, and you have to produce 4, 5, 6 pound bites through the day. You know, you could go out and have a good fishing day per se, catch a bunch of 3 pounders, but you come back and you're an 80th. So those tournaments they're always concerning. They're fun to be at, and enjoying yourself with the weather and fish catching, but they're also scary at the same time.
Yeah, I love smallmouth, and again, um, we're lucky that Kentucky Lake is started to be a smallmouth lake.
Yeah.
Do you find those northern smallmouth react different to certain baits up there versus what they do here? You know, it's really weird. These Tennessee River smallmouth, you can catch one on a 10XD in the summer, or you can catch one on a little bitty dream shot or drop shot bait. But up north, you don't see guys throwing those bigger crankbaits much, or even the bigger jerk baits. It's more of a finesse deal. Do you think that's because of the water clarity, or do you think those fish just change their feeding habits?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, that the water clarity has a lot to do with it. And on the Tennessee River, I mean, one of the best baits for a smallmouth is a big hollow belly swim bait. I mean, like mimics those big gizzard shad. We have bigger threadfin. I call them yellowtails. Up there, they're eating perch. That's what makes those chase. That's what makes those smallmouth. Any ones that chase up there, they're eating perch. And I mean, you're looking at that and perch fry. You know, like that. That's the only bait they have there that makes their eyes go up. Everything else is goby related, and it makes them look down. So even if you're fishing for bait fish eaters or perch eaters, they're looking up, but they're not eating big 6 inch perch. You know, most of the time they're eating small perch and perch fry or gobies on the bottom.
Interesting. You know, I feel everyone always says, my friend Adam, who finished second in the Toyota here, he said, man, those fish on the Tennessee River, they fight so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've only been to St. Clair once, and it was really good. And I thought they fought pretty good, but I wonder if it's just the way our current situation here is compared up north. There's not a lot of current in certain lakes. I know Erie and other places they get undercurrent and stuff like that, but man, I do feel that there's a little bit more competition. We may not have the high population, but what you got really competes with each other.
Yeah, for sure. And as far as fish fighting hard, you know, St. Clair has a little current. Kentucky Lake has a lot of current. And man, the Tennessee River smallmouth, they're different. They're long. They got huge tails. I mean, it's just so much power behind the tail. And you know, a lot of northern places don't have the current we do. St. Lawrence River does. Those fish they pull hard. So I think it's a lot to do with the current. They're used to living in a strong current. They're swimming 24/7. They're built for it. Just a same fish but different breed of fish.
Here's a good question. This is kind of what I was trying to say, but Mr. Critical Gravy here, great username.
Cool gravy.
Yeah, I like it. He's been on the channel for a long time. Says, question, John, how are you different from all the other guys on smallmouth? How do you differentiate, or do you need to be different and just be fortunate? So we all know every guy out there is probably going to Ned rig. He's going to drop shot, might throw a little finesse swim bait. How do you know that so many people are going to be fishing the same style bait? How do you differentiate from that guys other than just I fish a different spot?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's about having the bait in your hand and knowing how to make a fish bite. I fish for smallmouth a little different from some other people. I like to fish very shallow. I like to visually look at smallmouth. I'm fishing less than 5 foot most of the time, so it's a visual game. You know when one's following you. You know when to move your bait. You know where to throw it. But man, it's about that. Like you said, Baitman. It's besides being somewhere different, being in the right spot is key on that. You can be on a shoal down 3-pounders, be on a shoal up 4-pounders. So moving around a lot, knowing how to wiggle your worm correctly, a little better than others is kind of the deal.
Yeah, it's everyone knows the deal when they go up north.
Yeah.
Find them on a graph, forward facing, whatever you throw at them. Do you use a flogger? Are you all allowed to use the floggers?
We are allowed to use a flogger. I've only been to 2 spawning smallmouth tournaments in my life, and I never used a flogger. I found fish shallow enough that I could see, or I could see a bright spot deep enough, and I could just see a fish moving around some. I have a flogger. Probably going to take one with me, but we're probably going to be too late in the year to, if I spent the whole week looking for bedfish, I might find enough to catch on day one. So I've not had much experience behind one. I'll put it that way. Not in a tournament.
I got you. That's our water's definitely not clear enough for that.
Yeah.
It's just always funny seeing the photos of guys looking down there, and I kind of tell guys it's kind of like a magnifying glass, but it takes the glare off, and you can actually see down there in the water.
Yeah.
You can be specific. Here's a good question. I think John hit this up earlier at the beginning of the stream. Who are your mentors when you started fishing? And I'll say this: other than your grandpa and your dad, how about fishing guys? Who are some, maybe they fish still now, who are some fishing mentors, guys you talk to all the time?
Yeah, I talk to, you're good buddies with him, Mark Menendez. I talk to him constantly.
Yeah.
We're batting stuff off each other, and Mark is extremely smart about bodies of water.
Very.
You could call him up and ask him about why Kentucky Lake don't have grass in it right now. He will give you so much detail, you can't process all the information. He knows so much about every fishery in the lake. So my granddad mainly, and Mark, somebody that travels more and had more experience, are my 2 go-tos. There's not many times that I go to a place that I don't ring Mark up. Hey, Mark, what's up with Lake Eufaula? He's like, well, I ain't been in 20 years, but here's what I learned when I was there. He's been
what's so crazy is, I filmed him on the TV show. By the way, we got to get you on as a guest on the TV show. We've talked about that. But I can tell, we fish Kentucky Lake, and I'll say something about a spot, and he'll go off on a tournament in 1991, and he'll tell me the exact stump, brush pile, and the angle he was throwing, what bait. But you can also ask him about, random, I would say Smith Lake, Alabama, and his memory, it's unreal. He just knows so much. Well, so I would assume you kind of keep a tight-knit circle, keep to yourself quite a bit. All right, out of the remaining lakes out there, John, how many tournaments we got left? 4?
We got 4 tournaments. We got St. Lawrence, Harris Chain, Ozarks, and Watts Bar.
So out of those remaining 4, what's the one you're most confident and the one you're least confident in?
Probably the least confident, I would say, is the Ozarks.
Okay.
It's just a place that I've been to those, Table Rock, Bull Shoals, those fisheries before, and I just don't get a grip on those places. Just completely Highland Reservoir. Ozarks is all boat docks. Hopefully different this time around. Hopefully I don't have to fish boat docks, and I could just head down on my forward facing and catch suspended fish or fish off points or something like that. But I guess out of the remaining 4, if I had to look forward to any of them, would probably be St. Lawrence or Watts Bar. Watts Bar is going to be probably one of the worst tournaments you'll ever see in a Bassmaster tournament. We had a tournament last year on Red River where 6 pounds a day got a check, and we'll probably see just as low or
Really?
lower weights when it comes to Watts Bar.
I
Yeah.
thought at one time Watts Bar kind of took off, that like the quality fishing kind of went up, but I can't remember where it was. I don't know if it was an MLF event or something. It was on Watts Bar. I'm like, man, these weights they're junk. What's going on
Yeah.
with this place?
Yeah. I fished the MLF college tournament there in 2019, and I won it. We had like 119 pounds of fish, and we caught smallmouth and largemouth flipping stumps that were fish that were spawning. I was like, man, this is one of the best lakes I've been to. And ever since that year, it's just been fish kills. It's been, bad water quality. There hasn't been any fish in there really at all. Looking forward to that one because it's tough. It is a Tennessee River lake, but I'm gonna be able to fish offshore most of the time. And I like those tougher tournaments where 5 fish goes a long ways.
Right. So that's something I was going to ask you. I talk to several pros all the time, and as much as the viewer loves a whack fest where everybody's catching them, sometimes as a tournament fisherman, that makes it a little bit harder on you because you've got to produce a big bag. Whereas you get those tough tournaments, guys are struggling. It's tough to get a bite. If you sack a good sack of fish, you're like, whoa, I've got a chance, or I'm trying to get my points game up. If you're able to get those limits, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said earlier, we're going to St. Lawrence. It's going to be a slugfest. No matter what the weather is, no matter what conditions are, they're going to catch them, and that's scary for me because I have to catch big ones. Everybody's going to catch them. You got to catch big ones. Watts Bar, on the other hand, is I just got to get some bites. I just got to get 5 bites through an 8-hour day. And that's in my head constantly, it's tough, but I'm going to stay positive. I'm going to fish as hard as I can. And I may not catch a fish every 2 hours, but I might catch 3 fish in 10 minutes. So that's what kind of gets you through those long days, is not to be mentally out of a tough tournament before it starts.
I think it's great advice. Great advice. The mental game of fishing is a game in itself, and there's Gerald Swindle has talked about his struggles with I can be right there, and then I get mentally spun out, and it's not taken away. Gerald has definitely got the skills of everyone. He'll get him one. He'll get him an elite win. He'll get him an open win, but just getting to that point, you're really consistent. He seems to be like right there near the top, at the top. What's it going to take for you, John, to grab a win, whether it's an open or if you make the elites? Are you mentally prepared to win a tournament?
I am, and I've had some really, crazy things happen that I felt like, man, that would only happen to me. That's why I didn't have a chance to win that tournament. I know
like
it happened
every time I go fishing. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I've had that so many times where I thought I was going to win a tournament, and something changes, or catfish move in with fry, and they, flee. Everything flees off a spot. But I think that I'm there. I just think it has to happen, and I've had that happen. Like 2 years ago at Arkansas River, I had a 6-fish penalty, had a 2-pound penalty, and lost the tournament by 3 ounces. I experienced when it's your time, it's your time.
Right.
I scrapped my plan that got me in the top 10, went and did something completely different, and man, fish were just kind of flopping in my live well that day. So, I'm just going to keep trusting what I feel throughout each day. If I put the trolling motor down, if I ever feel like, man, this don't feel right, or I have like, man, maybe I need to try that, I'm going to keep trusting that little bug in my head, and hopefully eventually that comes around to win a tournament sometime.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Let's get some more questions here from the viewers. Caleb Morgan wants to know, hey, John, how important is finding current versus slack water when you're fishing heavy cover?
I prefer to be in moving water. No matter where I'm at, if there is water moving, there's fish either in it or nearby feeding, and the current is going to position fish. Whether it is smack dab in the middle of the current or if it's tucked behind a piece of wood. I prefer to find current than slack water.
All right, here's a random one. I want to know your answer on this one.
Okay.
Luke, does John have any sneaky balsa baits that he throws? You know, we're big balsa bait fans.
Yeah. You know, that tournament at Arkansas River, I love balsa square bills. If I'm fishing a river system, I'm gonna have a balsa square bill tied on, like the old Zoom square bills. I know that Black Label has some out now. You probably know more about it than I do, if it's an exact mold or not.
Yes. He's
It
got
is
all the Ed Chambers old tooling. So
Yeah.
Cliff is what he's making is as close as you're going to get.
Yeah. So I have a couple of those Zoom ones. I have some Black Label ones. I really like that if I'm on a river, and I wouldn't say probably not balsa, but I like the old Smithwick Devil's Horse, old topwater bait.
Oh yeah.
I have that thing tied on a lot. If I'm in any kind of tannic water, clear water, fishing shallow, I really like that old prop bait.
I feel like the prop bait, it gets a little love for about 2 weeks a year, and everybody forgets about it.
Yeah, if they have a tournament in Florida, that's all you see. But if they're not in Florida or on Seminole, then you don't see anything about it. But it's a fish catcher all year round, really.
Yeah, you sent me you posted a giant bass earlier this year, and I sent you a message, and you said Devil's Horse. I'm like, I can kind of believe it,
Yeah.
I'll tell you one that's really underrated. It's not a Devil's Horse, but this is a really good time of year. I sit around thinking about videos I need to make, and I was thinking about putting this little video. I like that Cotton Cordell Crazy Shad. It's not quite a Devil's Horse. You don't hardly see that on anyone's deck, but the mayfly hatches here. Those little mayflies are falling and fish are nipping, and you can throw that thing. Those little props will just sit there, just barely move the water. And a lot of times, if there's a smallmouth or largemouth nearby, they're eating those mayflies. They see that thing, that little chrome. That's my favorite one, the chrome. They just come up and just crush that thing. Very underrated bait this time of year.
Yeah, and that's kind of crazy you brought that up. My granddad, he grew up fishing on Kentucky Lake and Reelfoot. He loved that crazy crawler. That's something he still has in his tackle boxes, whether we were fishing around grass or he was catching spots on Kentucky Lake with it. Man, that's a bait he always threw.
Yeah, JP wants to know, how do you like fishing that Devil's Horse? Are you a constant mover, or are you the old trick I always hear? You throw it out there, you rip it, and you let all the ripples go away.
I really like fishing targets with it. If I feel like if I'm fishing shallow, if I'm throwing to a laydown, rock, or stump, you can bend your blades a little bit, and you can make that bait when you thrash it. It kind of takes a little nosedive. Instead of your bait moving in the water column, it's kind of just kind of in a small area for a long time. And probably 95% of the fish I catch on a Devil's Horse, you could see them come up to it. You'll see them wake up behind it, and that's kind of the most important time. When they wake up behind that bait, they're sitting there looking at it, and they're just kind of that moment of, is he going to bite it? And what I've found the best way to trick them is just to barely twitch it, barely get a blade turn out of it, and a lot of times they suck that bait in. Like throwing it on mono, 15-pound big game, so I like throwing it on.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. I'm not a Devil's Horse expert like you with that little Crazy Shad. It seems like this. If you get a good one, when you barely twitch it or whatnot, it doesn't need to move 3 foot at a time. It's like 3 inches at a time, and you got to be patient. But when it's just sitting there and that blade's still moving, if there's one around it, and a lot of times you're right, they'll show themselves. They'll come up and just crush it. Man, now we're getting lots of questions. Once we get talking baits, man, let's see. Somebody asked one I accidentally skipped over. All right, John. This comes from John Bird. He said, John, what is your favorite rod and reel setup in your boat right now?
There is one that I'm going to go on my drop shot setup. It's probably the 7.4 Lose. It's a Mark Zona Signature Series. That rod has perfect amount of tip. I mean, even though I'm tossing it out there, I'm making precise casts on my forward facing. A lot of tip to it. Allows me to be accurate with it and let it load up. But man, it has a really good backbone, because when I set the hook, I really pull hard. So I really pull hard, got my drag pretty much locked, a loose custom light, and then whenever I drive that hook in, I loosen my drag up. So I want to drive that hook and a good drag system when that fish starts pulling. So that's probably my favorite. It's probably the one that I kind of have nailed down the most, where I hook a fish on my drop shot and my drop shot combo. Good chance he's getting in the boat. I don't lose many fish on that.
That's one thing I said. What I've noticed about, I was asking you about that hook. I haven't really lost that many, but I did lose one the other night. And I was like, well, dang, I wonder if that's my hook or what. And you said the same size I throw. But it's unreal how good those little bitty hooks in a drop shot, your landing percentage goes way up if you got the right equipment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why I throw that. I tried that hook out, with a filler worm or little robo worm, whatever it is. And when you hook a fish with it, he's all but yours most of the time. If you lose the fish, the hook may have went inside the worm, or you may have just got a skin hook. But most of the time, that fish is caught.
All right, a few more questions here.
Right.
We've been on for dang near an hour. All right, South Jersey fisherman wants to know, what's your favorite chugger style popper?
Chugger style popper. I'm not the person to ask about poppers. I'm sponsored by Strike King, so I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to throw another one over it because I'm sponsored by them. I've been pretty transparent on baits I like to throw.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the only one that I've thrown is the Strike King, the Splashes, the KVD Splash.
It's actually a really good one.
I've never had any problems out of it. I don't pick that bait up and think, let me try another brand. That's not, when I pick my bait up, I seem to get bit on it. So that Strike King Splashes seem to be a good bait for me.
Yeah, speaking of, I found some missing footage I thought was deleted where Mark catches like a 6-pounder on one on the GoPro. They eat it,
Yeah, they do.
Frank Haslam, a good buddy Frank, he said, what's up, Kevin? Your favorite 2 TVA baits this time of year, and John's. So I'll let John go first. What's your favorite 2 TVA baits?
We've already covered this, I feel like, is Strike King XD 6 to 10, and probably a swim bait, a Shadowlicious, probably.
Yeah, if I was to answer, I'll be honest with you. As much as I love throwing a crankbait, the last few years has kind of bummed me out on a cranking.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a 9-inch plum ringworm, whether that's the Lucky Strike or the new Booza worm from 6 Cents. That ringworm, if you know, it just catches them here. And I'm a swimbait guy. I like a hollow belly, a bass tricks, just some sort of paddle tail. And do I think a hollow belly catches more than, say, a Scottsboro or something solid? Yes and no. I think when they're suspended, I think they like that hollow belly just a little bit more. Tend to fish the solid ones more on the bottom of the water column. But that hollow belly, there's something about it because it gets that perfect head movement with that tail wiggle. I used to take a Shadowlicious. I don't know if you ever tried this trick. If you got one that kind of wasn't running, it was a little stiff. If you peeled that first layer of skin off, it's just like a new bait.
Yeah, I've done that before. A lot of times you could take those and hold them up. And if the tail is nice and floppy, goes down both sides, you got a real good one. You don't have to do that. And if you pick one up and kind of stiff, it's kind of sticking up, then you can rip that top layer off, and you got basically a new swim bait.
It's hard to beat the old bass tricks, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So I got some new ones here. Right? Matter of fact, this is the new one. This is green gizzard shad. You know that green gizzard. I don't know how well you can see on your screen, but that green gizzard, 6XD, 10XD is such a player out here. Yeah. And mini lakes is a very natural color. When they come out with this one, I was like, man, I gotta grab some. I've thrown these and they run really, really good. So the guy that's doing bass tricks now he's got it going on. I got a couple questions I'm gonna combine into one. We talked about it earlier. Bob wants to know what size hook do you use for your drop shot, and Gravy wants to know what pound leader.
Yeah, so my hook, like I said earlier, if I'm Texas rigging, I'm using a 2-aught. Filler worm, trick worm, whatever kind of worm I'm throwing, 2-aught. Barely have your hook sticking out. And if I'm nose hooking or threading, like I'll do a lot of times on smaller bait or for smallmouth, I use a number 2. So number 2 for nose hooking, 2 alt for Texas rigging, and I'm usually between a 10-pound test. A lot of times on TVA, dirtier water. If I get cleaner water, I throw 8. Seaguar Tatsu. I haven't broke it. I don't have problems out of it, so I'm not going to change that up.
Andy Leonard, good question here. Do you ever use the tube? Kind of a forgotten about bait, it seems. That used to be the deal up north, guys dragging tubes or long lining tubes out there. And now with the Ned rig and the drop shot, it's like people kind of forget about it. But I know it's guys are throwing the stupid tube here on Tennessee River catching them.
Jake throws a tube all the time.
Yeah.
That's just not a bait that I've really got big into. It seems like that if I'm flipping it, I miss a few fish, so I'm gonna flip a bug bait. If I'm throwing it with the head inside of it, a lot of times if I have fish throw it, so I'll throw a drop shot or Ned rig. So there's very few times I prefer to have a tube over something else.
Right. Are you a Ned rigger? Do you got a plethora of Ned baits?
A very few Ned baits.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, if I'm going to throw something, I'm going to throw a drop shot. It has the same purpose. It's not on the bottom, but it's going to get bit just as good.
All right, let me. We've been on about an hour. I'm going to ask you a question. We talked before in private messaging. You're asking me about some glide baits.
Yeah.
Have you now got you a little collection of glide baits, and do you have one that you're kind of getting fond of?
You know, this is my first year, so I'm a very rookie glide bait fisherman. Did weigh a couple fish on it at Toledo Bend. Didn't catch anything like Ben caught on it at Toledo Bend.
If I was going to learn from a guy, to be honest, him and Matt Robertson, that's the 2 best ones I know of.
Yeah, so I've caught fish on them, spent probably too much money. They're probably not going to be used in my tournaments very often. I've got one pretty good phony shad,
right,
and kind of like a tiny clash, not really glide bait.
Yeah, it's almost more like a lipped jerk bait. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
the action in the water.
Yeah, and I got a few the KG. I got some of the shads that dropped, and they work good. But sometimes I get one to blow out on me if I'm not really paying close attention to it. I'd say my favorite one so far is probably a phony. I don't have a Hinkle or any of those really high dollar baits yet, but had some luck out of the phony and the tiny clash, and I have caught some on the shad, but this takes a whole lot of paying attention for it. I think
there's so many glide baits, swim baits out there. It's really easy to get wrapped up in buying the latest or the next drop and the hype bait. I've sold a bunch of mine, and I've kind of really narrowed it down to what works for me. And honestly, if you want an S-Waver style, I like the 6 cents draw. Works great for me, especially the new mini one. I think it's a perfect profile, especially for a beginner glide guy that catches them. I like. I've got a Spro Chad shad. I haven't used it yet, but I had an OG Chad shad, and they're different. I tell guys, glide baits, swim baits is like crankbaits. A 10XD doesn't fish the same as a DB3 Bagley, whereas a Chad shad does not fish the same as a bull glide. You got to figure each bait out. Now, saying that, there's certain lakes that they'll want that choppy style retrieve versus a long, slow glide. And it could be the opposite. Some lakes, they want that big shad profile, and other they want that narrow, almost herring-like profile.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's been a lot of guys catching them on those herring-type glide baits recently in some of the elite tournaments and whatnot. My biggest thing that I have not got good enough with is when I'm not visually looking at my bait, or if I'm looking at it forward-facing, and I got one after it, and I want to get erratic with it, I want to get fast with it, I'm not good enough yet to make that bait super erratic and it not blow out or not look, good enough to, make that fish finish,
I think that's what puts Matt and Ben above a lot of guys that I consider good swim bait fishermen. Obviously, Matt Allen, 10 Little Tactical. They're amazing with it too. But as far as tour level pros, and yes, I did say pros for open anglers, is they know how to get. When I've been in the boat with Matt, and he's like, I got one on it. And when I see I got one on, I kind of spaz out a little bit.
Yeah.
Matt does the opposite. He gets intense and makes a real turn, a rod twitch, and all of a sudden, there he is. Whereas I get one on it, and I try to do the same thing, or maybe I overwork it, or maybe I'll just keep letting it sit there. And those guys know exactly what to do to get that fish to bite. And I think that separates them from a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like, if I get a fish behind my jerkbait, a lot of the times I'm going to hook up with that fish at some point in the cast. It might be 100 foot out. It might be 10 foot out. I just haven't got that cadence, the correct cadence for each situation down with that swim bait yet. But if it's something you can knock out, you got a pretty good advantage in certain situations over a lot of people.
So Hunter asked, overall, do you feel like swim baits and glides are overrated? I wouldn't say overrated myself. What about on the tour level? Do you think guys are they kind of, you see more guys chunking them these days and not catching fish, or do you think they got their place?
They're definitely not overrated. Might be something we have too many of. I might say that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
As far as swim baits, no, there is tons of fish weighed in on swim baits in every tournament at all times of year. And a glide bait, also not overrated. A lot of times you'll see a guy pick one up looking for a big bite. And sometimes he may catch that 5+ pounder, sometimes he might not. But if that's a bait that someone has confidence in, then it's going to be dangerous. If someone has confidence in any lure, that's what they need to be throwing. So, no, I don't think overrated. May not need $5,000 of them like some of us have, but having a couple you definitely should have that.
I think I'm kind of at the point where it's, instead of having 5,000 different ones, I only want 5 or 6, but I know what they're going to do. Like, I've got one, the paperweight. That's my favorite. I can manipulate it. I can make it glide wide. I can chop it. I can burn it. And then I can just make it just have a very natural swim. I just bought 2 more today. That's how much I like it, because I know what that bait's going to do. I put time in with the mini draw from 6 cents. I know what that bait does. Versus having a Hinkle, Ben's, he's confident, he throws a lot, but having Hinkles and depths and whatever garage builders and having 50 different ones, I was getting to where I wanted to go fish a glide bait, and I'm debating 15 minutes which one I'm going to throw.
Yeah. I mean, and there's other baits that I'm going to pick up before a glide bait for sure, just because I'm confident in getting bit in something else. But to answer the question, not overrated, maybe overhyped in some sense, but.
This is a weird question. I don't know if this is one of your friends or just some random person that joined the channel. So, John, what's your opinion on the new Nacho Libre minnow bait? My team would love to know.
American cheese.
Yeah, that has to be a random.
Yeah.
I've never heard of the Nacho Libre bait.
Yeah. Good. It's the juice. We didn't want that out on the public.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add? You got I'll ask you this straight up. There's this new thing out there. It's called bait pop.
Yeah.
So, bait pop is basically a paste. You lather your soft plastic. I guess you can put it on your hard bait, and that is supposed to enhance how you see your bait on forward-facing sonar. I know the baits probably work, but does that can you explain kind of the difference of what's going on there? I think Tackle Warehouse carries it, and it's made by the original fish formula people, correct?
Yeah, it's a original fish formula is the backing behind it. The same people who made that are making bait pop. And when we first kind of launched that, the idea of it was because, as we progress as anglers, forward-facing sonar is just kind of a standard now. It's not new technology. It's something that's on everybody's boat. And whether you're, a vet, you spent 1,000 hours behind your forward-facing, or you're someone new, being able to track your bait helps everybody. So the paste and the sparkle scale was originally just for forward facing, being able to show up better. It does have a better return. But now we're kind of, also realizing that we have a great scent and a great lure customization in the same deal. So it's not just strictly the forward facing deal. It's kind of all the above thing. It's not like a water-based or oil-based scent. It's a paste. It stays on your bait longer. And it works. I mean, I use it. I mean, even on a football jig, I put some crawfish scent and some sparkles on it. I would say I use it more times than I don't use it.
Yeah, so back in the day, they used to have a tournament out of Paris. It's called the Fish Formula Tournament.
Yep.
I mean, Fish Formula was a huge brand back in the day. And that tournament was a good paying tournament. I mean, I've got photos of me in diapers with Rick Clunn and Guido and Guy Aker and those guys. They would come fish that tournament. So it's actually really cool, whether, guys think it works or not. I'm obviously, if you're using it, I'm not going to second guess you, but it's cool to see an old school brand like that kind of reevaluate, reformulate, and get with the new technology, and it's popular again. It's pretty cool. So,
yep.
I don't know how you want to end this, John. Obviously, I want to see you qualify for the elites. You're a Western Tennessee guy. I think you might be a fan of the Vols, so I like that. What's your end game here? Obviously qualify for the elites, but what's the tournament you're looking forward to? Do you think the last one, which is the one you're like, I've got this one on my calendar, I know I'm making a good finish?
None of them.
None
of them. The one
I hate honest people that are like, I'm going to really catch them here, and I'm so pumped up. But
every one of them scares everybody out there. There wasn't a TVA summertime, springtime tournament that I had circled. The one I'm looking forward to the most is hopefully Harris Chain after the second or third day when I survived and make the Elite Series.
That'd be awesome.
I've been at this for 3 going on 4 years now. Been that close literally every single year, and sometimes 1 or 2 divisions or the overall. I'm just tired of chasing that dream, honestly, because it's kind of like, where does the road end? Do you stop chasing what may or may not happen? Financially, the Opens aren't feasible. I'm leading the AOI points, and I've spent nearly what I've made this year. The payouts just aren't that great. The exposure, is somewhat there in the Opens. Bass does a good job with that over some others. The Opens aren't feasible financially. Hopefully at the end of the year at Harris Chain, hopefully that's the tournament I'm looking forward to the most, is the end of this chase, I would say.
I saw a tweet the other night, and actually it made a lot of sense. It had nothing to do with fishing. So I'm a big into dirt track racing and whatnot. I'll find it on my phone here.
All right.
And when I read this, I might have to post this on Instagram. All right. So this comes from a team owner that owns a Royal Outlaw Sprint car. That's the most popular dirt series out there. Says, the day we stop pretending the purse is where anybody in racing makes money, it will be a good day. End of the day, it's $10,000 to win show, $5,000 to driver, $1,000 in tires, $1,000 in equipment, $1,000 in hotels, $1,000 in rent. Best case is you break even if you win.
Yeah.
And I read that and I said, sounds just like bass fishing.
That's exactly like bass fishing. Very few. We could get on a whole different subject on this. There's a very few professional leagues out there where you have to pay to play. 5 years ago, 10 years, let's go 10, 15 years ago, the industry was not as big. There was not more people in bass boats. There was not more people buying lures. There was not more people watching Bass Live or MLF Live. The payouts were watching YouTube. The payouts were better. Entry fees were the same. Now the entry fees are the same, sometimes more, and the payouts are less. Business standpoint, MLF and Bass are probably crushing it. Us anglers, we're we're in line. 175 of us signed up for the Opens this year, and we're chomping at the bit to fish. So the money's not there. The only way the money's there is if you get to that top tier of anglers that have really good backing, sponsor-wise. And, it's not a go-to-work job. You enjoy yourself for the most part. But, man, the money, it's an issue. I could go on and on about it, but it's not a lucrative sport.
I think we all understand that, I don't want to get you off on your tangent.
No, you're good.
Because I don't consider you complaining. You're just putting it out there like I was. But the similarity is those guys that race dirt, they're not in it to be rich. They're in it because they love it. And when you start talking about getting so close, I could tell you really love bass fishing. You want to qualify the elites. It is better financially, but do you want to be in that top tier group of fishermen?
Yeah, for sure. It's the competitive side of me, and I just love to catch fish. I don't love to sell cars. I don't love to work on boat motors. I want to do something that I like to do, and that's catch fish. And definitely an elite series. That's what I'm driving myself competitively for, and it'd be a little better financially for sure. So that's the goal, no doubt.
All right, last question right here of the night, and we're going to end it with John. John, what lakes are on your bucket list that you would like to go fish tomorrow?
The Great Lakes, northern fisheries. You just saw that tournament, MLF tournament on Champlain. Those fish, they don't get fished for all year like our fish do. I like northern fisheries. Never been to Oive. I know Oive's got a lot of pressure lately, but putting your boat in somewhere you catch a 10-pounder would be good. But if I had to go fishing tomorrow at a hotspot destination, it would be on the Great Lakes, probably Ontario, honestly, or Champlain.
I got to respond to this. Ryan Kirkpatrick, what's up, Ryan? Ryan's a great fisherman here on the North End. He said, bow fishing tournaments have a $200 entry fee. It's $15,000 to win. Something's messed up in the industry. If I can find it, Ryan, I have a plaque. I got second place in the World Bow Fishing Championships about 12 years ago. Second place in the World Championship of Bow Fishing. You know how much they paid? We split it 3 ways. I made $233. So the payouts have got a whole lot better. I'll be honest. I love bow fishing. I would do that over bass fishing if it paid that good. But anyway, John, I really appreciate you coming on here. I'm glad we did it. Maybe me and Mark can get together and have a show here locally. Maybe I can bring him down to Crockett or Reelfoot Lake, or you can come up here, show him some of them secret crankbait tricks. And
all right.
But you just gotta make me a deal. If you qualify for the leaks, you're gonna come back on the Baitman show. You're gonna spill some beans for us.
Oh, for sure, no doubt.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me and John tonight. Again, he's your Bassmaster Opens points leader, 4 events to go, West Tennessee guy. Great dude. He put some juice out there if you're paying attention, especially on the drop shot and some other things, and about how these smallmouth are catchable. John, I'm going to sign off. Guys, I'm going to probably try to stream again another night this week. I'll put it up there maybe Thursday night. And you guys have a great evening. Be sure to like and subscribe. And go follow John on social media. It's John Garret Fishing on Facebook and Instagram, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, John. Thanks again, bud.
Yeah, see you, man. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. All right, we're